Well, welcome everybody to our town hall, small business town hall. This is Steve Rao, and we are celebrating National Small Business Week. And we are here today live on Radio Murchie, the Triangle region's largest South Asian radio station, for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to go right into our town hall. But there are people attending, and I want to thank everyone for being here today. Radio Murchie is the Triangle region's largest South Asian radio station, aired all through the Triangle, also Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Dallas. And today I've got with us, we're going to talk about the reason we're doing this today. We've got an investor and advisor, Mark Easley, who lives in Morrisville. We have Will McGuire, the CEO of CrowdFund NC, and Anya Johnson, who is the community manager. And the reason we're doing this today, folks, is this is a follow-up from the Startup Summit, where John T. Chambers, my family friend, came and spoke to our Startup Summit community about the COVID-19 playbook. And what John reminded us is that in a down economy, we have to focus on survival, but we also have to focus on what we can do to break away. And John called it the Texas or Silicon Valley two-step, where we can do the dance after we preserve our cash and figure out where we can get the next play to move ourselves down the field. But the most important thing right now is to talk about is capital. And as a city councilman in Morrisville, that's where I'm hearing a lot of concerns from startups. And so today, we're gonna, every week, every month, we're gonna be doing another play in the playbook to take John's challenge. And so today, the playbook for COVID-19 pandemic for small business is, yes, crowdfunding. And that's why we're here today, to talk about CrowdFund NC. So I'm gonna begin really with one question. First of all, Mark Easley and Anya and Will, I'm going to start with Mark. Just tell us just a quick second about your background. And Mark, I'm going to ask you, as a Morrisville resident, an investor, an advisor, where does crowdfunding fit into our strategy? How can it help Morrisville? How can it help the Morrisville business and Triangle companies listening today to this town hall meeting?
Okay, Steve, sounds good. Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Easley. I've been a startup advisor and investor here in Morrisville for the last 20 years in the Triangle area. Mostly technology companies for me, because I'm a tech guy from Silicon Valley. And my interest in crowdfunding started, the crowdfunding actually, what we call investment crowdfunding is an important distinction. It's not like Kickstarter. It's where you can actually raise money as a company and get investors and do it through either equity investing or debt investing. So my interest in that came up because I just wanted to have another new source of funding for all of our businesses here in Morrisville and all around North Carolina. And that seemed like a very good one. We kicked it off at the federal level here in North Carolina. One of our local congressmen wrote the original crowdfunding law in Washington, D.C. We've duplicated another one here in North Carolina we call the PACES Act. And now it's all the regulations and laws and everything all put together so it's legal and transparent and safe and all those things for investors and for startups. And we've now got a whole brand new source of funding that we never had before, which is basically anybody in your local community or your local support group, your customer base, or anybody else can be people that are investing in your company as a startup or as a small business. And so we think that's a really good opportunity here, especially during these COVID times, for people to find some funding.
Well, we really appreciate that. And we're going to be, during our town hall, we're going to be engaging with some of the attendees, taking questions, and maybe really having more of what I call my Steve Rao style of fireside chat, which we're starting to do with leaders in all disciplines. So this will be our chance to really talk around the fire, so to speak, of what we can do to, I'm wearing my moonshot shirt because Mark Easley and I were working on how Morrisville can take our moonshot, following on the heels of Mary Ann Baldwin, my friend, and Mayor Raleigh. But this may be the chance to begin that moonshot for Morrisville. Will, tell me a little bit about CrowdFund NC and your perspective from a region, both Wake County, Triangle, and North Carolina. I know you and I are working on some ideas with the Wake County commissioners and Matt Calabria. So tell us a little bit. What's your
I think what's really great about this model and what we've been kind of looking at is that investment crowdfunding has allowed over 80 industries to get funded. Everything from your favorite brewery and restaurant, all the way to the new startup company to mature companies. And it's really taken off. So what's kind of neat about this world now is that any business out there can get funding from their broader based community on their terms, that they want to pick. And so it's created this world where we can all be co-invested with each other. I know some of the things we had talked about is in the midst of COVID, especially when there's money being handed out by government entities, how is it that a matching funds program paired with, hey, here's where the community is picking and choosing to put their dollars. Well, if one company out there can raise X dollars and have it matched by those matching funds, we potentially double the amount of funding that's out there for businesses or more. And so that's a pretty interesting value prop, is now the community is picking and choosing who they want to see that provides value to their local economy, who they want to put money in, and the dollars that we also pay via taxes, you know, to the government can be rehanded out that way as well.
Well, that's a great overview. We're going to come back with a final question before we leave, but that's great. So we've gotten the perspective of Mark. When we do the town hall, we're going to be talking about, and we encourage everyone to join us on Facebook in a few minutes. We're going to be talking about crowdfunding from a Morrisville perspective. We're going to talk about these ideas that Will has about, you know, this whole idea of providing resources and funding to companies and the kinds of things that are going on in other regions that we can follow. But Anya, let's move to, so you're an investor, and, you know, we hear a lot about shop local, but are we saying here, Anya, that also in addition to encouraging residents of the Triangle to shop local, that we can invest local? Do you believe that it's creating strong community?
I do. I think it really builds up the sense of community within the geographical area, or the city, the state. And I recently came out of Meredith College's entrepreneurship program and served as a student mentor. And the most common problem that I faced with these young female entrepreneurs was they didn't really know where to get capital from. And with a focus on social responsibility, this just seems like an awesome opportunity. And for me as a first-time investor, I always sing the praises of shop local. I want to support our small businesses. And now I can take that a step further with a low minimum investment that isn't going to make me lose any sleep over.
Fantastic. Before we leave today, what do you want the listeners on this radio show to walk away with? Where can they go learn about crowdfunding? And the reason I ask that question is that a lot of the events I've been going to the chambers and the regional organizations, they're basically, I mean, they're doing a great job, but it's just, where can you go get funding? So you can go to PPP, you can go to sba.gov/coronavirus, you can go get a list of all these websites. And some of those organizations are having a hard time getting approval to get the funding. So if I'm a business, I guess that's a great way to end the interview. Where's the best way for me to go learn about crowdfunding? We'll start with you, Mark.
Okay, well, I'll just say, I'll let them cover where to go and how to do it, but I just want to say the investment crowdfunding strategy does not replace all those things. You know, as a small business, you want to look for sources of funding anywhere you can get them that are reasonable, but it's a brand new one that's never been available before. It really has some advantages for you in terms of what the terms are and how you get that funding together. So it's a good time to study it and look into it and figure it out.
Will, where can they go?
Yeah, I would go off that too. I mean, CrowdFund NC, we've made it our mission to help provide understanding to founders on how to raise capital in this way and use it in conjunction with other models that are already out there. So, I mean, for example, it's very possible a founder may be raising SBA loan plus a private round from traditional capital plus a public round, and they're just sequencing it different. So now they can not only get, you know, the sources of traditional funding, but now they can have a much larger investor base from their community that may act as sales and marketing agents for the business. And to Anya's point, you know, sometimes those minimums are very low, they're within reach of people. So it's something that's easily understood by the community on how they can participate. So it's a really neat world.
Okay, great. And folks, if you're listening on the webinar, please chime in. Anya, Mark, thank you so much. And Will, thank you so much. Anya, any final thoughts before we go into our virtual town hall?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know about ncgrind.com. If you're looking to see what investment opportunities are available in North Carolina, that's a good place to start.
Okay, great. Well, we want to thank Radio Murchie for broadcasting this. We're going to be airing this again on Sunday at 4 o'clock on 99.9 HD4, 101.9 FM, and 1490 AM. But the exciting thing, it's also going to be aired in Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Dallas. So North Carolina will be heard around the country, which is always a good thing. Thank you so much, ncgrind.com. We'll be back. And now we want to go right into our town hall. So you can just give us a minute. We're going to connect to the Facebook streams, and we're going to begin. And so still stay with us in the webinar. And we ask anyone attending to please chime in with your question. We're going to make this next 30 to 40 minutes interactive. And I'm going to have to probably repeat some of the things I did before for those joining on Facebook. But Ian, you go ahead and give us the green light when we're live.
Yeah, I'm starting the process, Steve. I'll let you know. You want it on your page or your site?
Do the site, and then we're going to, I'll send Anya the email, and she's going to tell everyone we'll be posting it on my page, so everyone goes to my page.
Okay. I think that's what I did. It's already in. I'll get the link anyway, and I'll post that.
To my page, yeah. So folks on the webinar, we are still broadcasting this, so we're going to just wait a minute, and then we are going to go right into our town hall meeting. I'm going to stand. I can't stand this.
Give me just a second, Steve. Looks like it's almost finished connected. Hey, Steve, we're live.
Well, welcome Facebook, and we are here today to talk about crowdfunding. And we have with us today Mark Easley, an investor, a Morrisville resident, and an advisor to CrowdFund NC. We have Will McGuire, the CEO of CrowdFund NC, and we have Anya Johnson, the community manager. So for those of you joining, to save the attendees the time of repeating everything, today we are beginning our series of what I call calling plays on the John Chambers challenge of having a COVID-19 playbook. And we are beginning to do, hopefully some businesses are getting through the downtime, and we want to talk about funding and access to capital as where can we think out of the box in terms of what plays we could start calling in Morrisville and Cary and Raleigh to put cash in the hands of businesses so they can grow and they can hire. And so today we're going to be talking about crowdfunding. So we're going to begin again with Mark. And Mark, could you explain, and by the way, if you have questions, please chime in on chat or on the Facebook. This question's already coming in, so I'm going to start with this. If I'm a business and I'm not able to get the funding from the traditional source, loans, grants, way forward, PPP, all these other things, how do I begin the process of crowdfunding? And why should I be thinking of crowdfunding?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. Basically, crowdfunding is a brand new source of funding that's only been available for the last couple of years since all of the regulations and rules and all that stuff's been in place. And it's starting to become very, very successful. I'll let Will talk about how successful it is out there around the country. But it's a good way to get funding. And what you do is you put together a story about your business. You put together an offer, which is what kind of a investment you want people to make in your company. And those offerings can either usually be equity-based, you're selling some stock in your company, or they're debt-based, you're going to get a loan from those investors. And then once you put that all together, you put it online in a format that everybody can read and follow, and you go out and try to find the investors in your company. So the big change is it's not you chasing around after banks and after more traditional ways of doing things. It's you inviting the people that already have an interest in your business to help you get it going. And that's your community, that's your customer base, that's people that have an interest in the target markets that you're going after. There's lots of good ways to be successful doing that. And I guess the third thing that's very important about the whole concept is now everybody can do it. What investment crowdfunding allows with these new laws and regulations is anybody who's over 18 years old can be one of your investors. And that was never possible before for these private type of offerings. So that's the
Okay.
big thing, and that's where people are raising lots of money that way.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. So, Will, we're going to go to you now. We're going to ask each person about 2 questions, and then we're going to just make it interactive and start taking questions from Facebook and the audience, the attendees. But so, Will, Mark's talked about, the tactical of, the reason it's a good resource. Could you talk a little bit about examples in North Carolina for our audience to listen to in terms, and where I'm going with this, we're going to come back to Mark focusing on Morrisville, Cary, Western Wake, Raleigh, the Triangle region. But I'm getting a lot of technology companies come to me that say, Steve, I've built an app that I want to roll out to Morrisville, but I don't have the funding or the resources. So are there specific examples in North Carolina you can point to that went down this road that are now viable, thriving companies in our state?
Yeah, great question there. And that's largely why we put together NC Grind. And maybe Anya, maybe you're better answer. You want to answer this one for North Carolina? I'll start out from more of a national scene and how North Carolina has kind of gravitated to it, if that works for you, Steve.
Oh, Anya, that'd be great. Could you take that? That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty much every kind of business has utilized crowdfunding. Actually, Will, do you want to start at a national level and then I'll hone things down?
Yeah, sure thing. So like in this world, all this kicked off in like 2012 when some people went to the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, said, why is it not legal for me to put, $100 in my friend's startup company or, in the next, business that's in my community? Well, since then, what happened was 4 years later, some laws got approved to allow anybody to participate. And starting in 2016, since 2016, there's been over 500 million invested in these public offerings with over 500,000 people participating. And the question we often get are who are these people? Because the numbers are quite staggering. When I got back into this in 2019, the numbers were a fraction of that. And it's because it's growing at an exponential scale. And so these investors are just like Mark said, they're not only the professional investors that are in the ecosystem, but they're the first-time person who just really cares about making that business succeed. And so what happened with North Carolina, as happens with us in a lot of ways, is we caught on to the scene. We helped build it, but we moved a little bit slower in it. And that's kind of led us to where we are in North Carolina now and what's happening that we centralized on NC Grind. So Anya, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the North Carolina scene and what types of companies are using in our backyard?
Yeah, absolutely. So since 2017, we are just compounding the number of people who are utilizing this method. It started out with I think 3 companies raised in 2017, and now we currently have 10 raising all at the same time. And it's just really awesome that North Carolina is taking advantage of this method. We've seen tech companies, breweries. We just think it's awesome that you can take $100 and go give it to the coffee shop opening up down the street. And we're seeing that play out in North Carolina.
So
Yeah,
you can raise money through your community. So if the technology community wants to get behind a really cool app, we can raise money through crowdfunding as a source. Right?
Yeah, and it may sound like a little Wild West, but like Anya's pointing out here, these are companies that people can relate to. It's worked for companies that aren't consumer focused, but it's also worked for companies that are consumer focused. And like Mark said, a business is telling a story. They're telling a story to people like emotionally, this is what my business does. Here's how we build a product or service that, people really value, that people will pay for. Well, rationally, somebody's going to pay something for that product or service. So the only thing we've done now with investment crowdfunding is just opened up the doors to who can potentially benefit from that investment opportunity and made it open to a wider audience. So what I think is kind of neat about this world is that, the community, whether they're wealthy or not wealthy, they can all participate at the same time now. And I think it's probably important too, Steve, that we point out, we're on here, we think this opportunity for people to participate is great. We're not telling anybody to invest. We're just telling them they have the opportunity now to take a look at what's in their backyard. And that's kind of a neat world that didn't exist before 2016.
Okay, fantastic. Before we get to our first question that's come from the panel, I guess the question I would ask Anya is, do you have any names of, are you allowed to give any names of companies that got their money through crowdfunding that we know of? Are there any, or can you just tell us relatively how many companies in North Carolina they're on the trajectory of raising crowdfunding and getting to the market?
Yeah, historically, we've seen around 20 raises through Regulation CF. And so there are a few other regulations that aren't as public facing. We've had a Meadery raised money, a tea company, tech companies, health companies. Without giving names, you can just see the broad variety of industries that have utilized it.
Okay, fantastic. And this is from one of our attendees, Bruno Roy, who said, what is the appetite for early stage healthcare offerings with crowdfunding investor? Or is this kind of funding more limited to products that investors can see, touch, feel, or directly experience?
I love that question. Mark and Anya, do you mind if I take that? Okay, so one of the earliest companies, and this one impacts me personally, is an artificial pancreas company. My dad just passed away this year from pancreatic cancer, and after a long battle. So there's an artificial pancreas company, one of the first ones to oversubscribe one of these $1 million community-based rounds. It went on to raise 136 million in Series C from traditional means afterwards. Another company out there that's producing a cure for a rare form of brain cancer. You can find them on the stock market now. They raised in 2018 from a public crowd and then went public that same year. It's called CNSP. So it's neat. Like when we say there have been 80+ industries that have used it, it really is working for about every industry out there. I've seen everything from aerospace, communication, satellite companies, to life sciences, to healthcare, to you name it.
Okay, so it can work, and that's a great question. And I think I want to extend that to the technology companies. So if you're listening today and you're a member of the Technology Association or TIE Carolinas or CD, and you're a tech company or you have an innovative idea or app or something in AI or data science, this could apply to you. So we're going to give you some resources at the end where we can give you that information. Mark, this question, I'm going to give it, you're a Morrisville resident. We're working with Will on perhaps partnering with the County Commission of Wake County to see if there's a way of getting some CARES Act funding to provide matching grants for this. Why do you think this is a viable strategy for a town like Morrisville, or I see some people from Cary on this right now from the Cary Economic Development. Yeah. But, is this something that we should be really thinking about in addition to everything else we have as a new play that we can call to survive this pandemic, but then grow our companies so we can thrive?
Right. Well, I'd love to directly answer that about Morrisville and Cary too. We can include that in here. I mean, we're the fastest growing boom towns in the state. Everybody's moving in here for a lot of good reasons. We all pretty much familiar why here. It's good cost of living and all those things. So because of that, we have a huge boom in both small businesses that are opening. And Steve, you get involved with that all the time, all the new shopping centers and new businesses that are opening in Morrisville and around Cary too. And we've got the big tech sector and also the healthcare sector here in the Triangle, a lot of which are based in Morrisville and Cary as well. And you can use the tech, both of those groups can use investment crowdfunding as part of their fundraising strategy. So for Main Street businesses, you're going to raise money from your customer base and the local community. And for the bigger high growth companies, you're going to raise it from investors that are interested in the particular space that you're in. As an example, as an investor myself, I love the IoT space. That's a big fast growing one. And I understand it really well. So I'm looking for, and we have a lot of IoT startups here in this area. So for a town like Morrisville or Cary, it's great because it'll address everything from your local small business that's just getting started. It'll address a business that's already existing, but maybe wants to open up the next coffee shop or the next branch of their restaurant, all the way up to, a large tech company that's already got a lot of investment, but it just needs more and wants to raise some more funding through their supporters and their customer base. So that's why I love it, and it's a good match for Morrisville right now.
Will, how do we, we're talking to the county commissioners about expanding this. You talked about models, and we were talking last night about models in Europe that are successful, the 500 million raises around the country. How can we expand it beyond Morrisville to other leaders that are listening to this call right now? There's been a chance of maybe working with Wake County and the CARES Act funding to get matching grants. Is that a possibility for?
I think it is. I mean, I think it's definitely something that would help benefit more business owners, because I think about it this way: there's a limited pot of money that can be given out via government funding. Of course, Fed can keep printing money, but large in part, we've got limited funding from CARES Act. So if a business could still get the same amount of funding, but part of that doesn't have to come directly from the government, it can come from the community, we can potentially expand the number of businesses that are successfully getting the money they need to not only, stretch out through this pandemic, but also thrive during the pandemic in many cases. Because now they've got, again, the community's participating, they've got all these people that are financially vested in the success of that business way beyond just they love the business. And so in Europe, they have programs that are just standardized now that have that type of matching funds. There's some efforts at a national level to get a national program implemented for matching funds too. And a large part of it eliminates the political pressure of having to choose winners and losers, that often faces government officials. So I think the program could be beneficial all the way around, but even without the program, I still think, and we're seeing, during COVID, when all the other funding sources kind of shut down, investment crowdfunding, these public-based rounds, took off. They had their best quarters ever, and they've continued to do that in the midst of COVID. So it's becoming a more and more Main Street source of funding out there for businesses. And there's some very well-recognized names people on the call would recognize in it.
Well, at the end of the call, in about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to do a quick update on the COVID pandemic, which I normally do on live every few days, just on some things that have happened, just for everybody that are listening. We're trying to combine it with other events so people don't have to see me on Facebook every day alone. So thank you for joining me today. I guess, Anya, anything to add to that? As somebody that's, a crowdfunding investor, would you encourage other people listening today to find out a business they're passionate about, and in addition to buying, if they are raising money this way, to write a check or to help them out that way?
Yeah, I can't really speak to that. I don't want to advise anyone on investment because that just gets into sketchy territory, but we just think that this is really awesome that there is the opportunity to get locally vested in the businesses in your backyard. So you could support a friend, a family member in a way that you just weren't able to before. And we just think that's awesome.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
Basically, the important thing is you can find out all this information online and on CrowdFund NC and also ncgrind.com. Where the investments are, but I just want to mention that the way it works is it's just kind of like investing in your brokerage account. You have a Fidelity or Schwab. You log on to one of the platforms. In our case, it's Local Stake NC, and you sign up to get an investor account. And once you get up there, instead of seeing a bunch of Wall Street stuff being listed, you see, North Carolina businesses listed and the opportunities that they have. So, and then it's required by all these laws and regulations we put together. It's got to be very transparent. Everybody gets the same information, and it works really well. And you get to decide, do you want to invest in that company according to the terms and conditions that they're offering? So it's nothing tricky or fancy or difficult to do. It's actually quite easy to do. And once you've gone through the websites and understand the FAQs and all the things we have up there, you'll find it's an easy way to invest. I like that style of investing so much that I've just pretty much 100% gone to it. If they don't have an investment crowdfunding company profile and a place for me to look online for somewhere for me to figure out if I want to invest or not, I tell them come back when you do.
Yeah. And if I can extend that too, Steve, I mean, that's one of the reasons I even became a founder's CrowdFund NC was I started out as an investor. My wife and I decided we wanted to co-invest with all these founders that are out there. And even though we knew it was risky, even though we knew we could like lose all of our money in these investments, we found it was really neat that we now live in that world where we can literally be co-invested. So I mean, like my wife and I have done over 50 of these now. We got to play some of our first ones in North Carolina because it, you know, for a large part, it was California and Boston and Texas, all those ecosystems leading the charge. But now we're seeing exponential growth right here in our backyard. And it's Tanya's point. It's really neat to be co-invested with people that you see on a daily basis, new people that you meet that are in Asheville and Wilmington and Charlotte and Fayetteville and just all over the state. So for us, it was more of, this is a neat world that now that we've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, I can even pull my child up to a PC and he gets excited about some of the stuff he sees out there at 7. I mean,
That's
it's
fantastic.
incredible.
A couple more. We got a few more minutes. This is just going great. I'm just getting such positive vibes. You guys have been an excellent panel. I guess, Will, we'll start with you. And it's just something that you told me that was very intriguing. You know, next month, we're probably going to bring in some venture capital and angel investors. We're going to talk about, you know, from portfolio companies and sort of looking at their playbooks, what they're seeing in a local market in terms of challenges, funding, market trends, where they're seeing possible for investment. But you got me really thinking last night when we were talking about venture capitalists and your traditional institutional investors getting involved with this kind of funding. So you mentioned my 2 favorite people, Mr. Wonderful and Robert and Mark Cuban and the Shark Tank, right? Which I'll probably tonight.
Absolutely.
They're doing a lot of replays of that. But are institutional investors also getting involved with this? So it's sort of the 2 go hand in hand, right?
They are. And what's kind of neat is to see the evolution of that industry is that a lot of what's called venture capitalists out there, angel groups, are actually starting to co-participate in these rounds. I've had founders that I have literally invested in several times that their traditional source of capital would not invest in that venture round until they had a crowd of financially vested people because it helped reduce risk in the investment. So to your point, yeah, Mr. Wonderful, Robert Herjavec, Neil Patel, these big names that are out there that are go-tos, they're actively participating in the world and getting in front of it because I think the large part and degree, they think it can help build higher quality deals and potentially, you know, build these networks that help those companies thrive and succeed. I think time will show if that plays out, but data points are headed that way. And it's kind of a, again, it's neat to see everybody co-investing together now.
Fantastic. Anya, I mean, do you have anything to add on that? Or do you just think, you know, people can go to NC Grind to learn more? I mean, just to name a couple companies, Battery Exchange, Live Well, Ollie Gray, Nightscope out of California, Swipe Buy out of the Triad. These are all companies. You can go to NC Grind and you can find out, right, which companies are leveraging this, and gives people a place from this town hall to go and start thinking about something they might not have been thinking about.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. You can find all of those resources and explore for yourself and make the decision whether you want to invest or not.
Fantastic. Couple more minutes we got. Mark, I'm going to ask you a question that this is fascinating, and this is coming in from someone that heard me speak at the council meeting on Tuesday and Mark had shared this information, but here's Steve Rao mentioned at our council meeting that 10% of all public companies in North Carolina are headquartered in Morrisville. So I'm just going to name them for those listening today. And when I say Morrisville, folks, it's a shout out to the Triangle, okay? So I know there's a competitive thing sometimes in different cities, but City Health, Channel Advisor, Heat Biologics, Liquidia, Novan, Transenterix, Issuer Direct, 10X Therapeutics, Pyxis International, and Fujifilm Diacid. First of all, I want to say that you see a number of those companies are actually involved in healthcare. President Trump visited Fujifilm a couple of months ago, weeks ago, in Morrisville, to talk about Operation Warp Speed and Novavax. You have Key Biologics developing COVID testing, and Liquidia and Novan all developing antiviral treatments. So real shout out to them on what they're doing in the COVID pandemic. But the question is, we have these big companies in Morrisville, and David Gardner has mentioned about how, you know, an investor, he's an investor, how we can leverage corporate capital and mentoring in our startup ecosystem. So
Right.
I think that's something that we can be leveraging in Morrisville as we take our moonshot, as we develop our playbook. If we have all these public companies, shouldn't we be leveraging that more to connect them to our startup? Where do you think the opportunity is for all of us?
Yeah, that's a great one. That's one that I look at a lot. You know, how you get the big guys to be partners with the community, with some of the smaller businesses and the startups, and it's really important. And there's a good process to that. And the crowdfunding piece of it fits in with something we call syndication. And we're building that up right now too as part of our whole process. And what that does is it allows the larger institutional investors and the VCs and the angel groups and the big public companies who have, a lot of them have funds specifically to invest in smaller companies. It's a method for those people and other accredited investors here in the Morrisville and in the Triangle to get together and make a pool of funds that will go into some of these companies. So if you're interested in that particular subject, you want to look at our section on the website called syndication. There's a good set of FAQs up there to explain how that works. And you know, it's great that we have a lot of companies that are available, going to make funds available. One I always like to mention though, Steve, as a proud Morrisville resident,
Yeah,
we have the co-world headquarters of the largest PC company on the planet Earth. It's called Lenovo.
that's right.
For those of us who remember, it used to be the IBM PC company, right? But they're the biggest PC company on the planet, and they've officially declared Morrisville, North Carolina, as their co-world headquarters, and the other co-world headquarters is in Shanghai, China. So I don't think anybody's got anything over on us when it comes to tech and big companies and how this is all going to go forward.
I mean, this is fantastic. Before I go into my quick update, we want to thank you all. I think we've covered a lot of territory. I mean, I think at the end of the day, this is an opportunity for us to think about a source of funding that we don't traditionally think about, crowdfunding. And it fits in. We're going to be doing some follow-up meetings with the Wake County Commissioners about where this could, and Will McGuire and Mark and I are working together on that with Matt Calabria. Anya and I are going to be working on more community outreach. I guess as we end, can you direct folks to, let's say I guess we'll end the town hall this way before I go into my update. I'm a small business. I'm in technology. I'm creating an app. I'm a small restaurant business. How do I begin the process of crowdfunding if I'm interested from this call? What do I do? What are the steps real quickly? Go to the website. You can give that to me and then.
Yeah. So generally the way we tell businesses to simplify it for them is they can reach out to us at CrowdFund NC. And one of the simplest ways they can get started to see what they're getting into is when they come to our page, we have access to all those offerings that are out there. I can guarantee you we will probably find a company that's in their same industry that has done this before that they can take a look at and see exactly what that company did. And then we help guide them through the steps if that's something they also want to participate and do themselves. And so simply by looking at what others have done and then making that applicable to their business and their particular crowd, that's where it all starts.
Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, I think this is really exciting. Mark, so the website, I'll make your job easier. It's CrowdFund NC and NC Grind. They can start there to learn about it, right?
Yep.
Yep. And then do they have to go get legally registered with the Secretary of State's office and all that stuff from a legal perspective?
Just depends on the offering they're using. So we partner with platforms that are out there to help take on some of that. In many cases, like Mark was saying, is there are localized offerings too that may require registration through a Secretary of State. But the neat part is founders don't have to worry about that too much. All the information that they need is concierge right to them.
Okay. Mark, anything to add, or did I do a good enough job getting a lot through the meat of this stuff, or did I leave it?
Yeah, I think you got to most of the key things to get everybody started. I just want to encourage everybody it's worth taking a look, you know. spend a couple hours to investigate this and see if it's a source of funding that's going to work for you or not.
Anya, did we do enough out here today, or is there anything else you have to add before we go into my update?
Not particularly. I'm just really excited to see how this can change the economy in the Triangle.
Fantastic. Well, before we go into my quick update, and please stay with me, everybody, so we can just really grow. All I need is a minute. But just want to thank everyone for National Small Business Week. The SBA, if you go to sba.gov, there was a great virtual conference today. And so if you're a business listening, there was lots of really good talks about capital raising, workplace environments, remote workforce, challenges that small businesses are going through. But I think the really interesting thing is how important small businesses are to the United States and our economic strength. You know, they're critical to our communities, and almost, you know, a majority of job creation in the United States are small businesses. So we want to continue to work to promote awareness of small business. And so we'll wrap up National Small Business Week this week, but I would encourage everyone to go to sba.gov, and you can get register and get the recordings of some of the really great sessions that I attended and that we attended. And I think it's just really great. Really, from a COVID pandemic, basically three things. You know, Vice President Biden, the Democratic nominee, visited Charlotte yesterday for a Black Economic Summit, and he unveiled the Black Americans, an act that it's basically a small business advisory council, and it's calling Take America Back through racial equity. And he's basically planning for $70 billion in historic Black universities and other minority serving institutions to leverage $150 billion in new capital to grow businesses. And he wants to do this for other universities. So that was an interesting talk. He was there with Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles on that. President Trump visited Charlotte today, talk about healthcare. It's his 5th visit to the state of North Carolina. And if you're a parent, Wake County yesterday announced that they will be looking at returning back to school October 26th for K-5 students. Don't know yet what we're going to do with the high schoolers and middle schoolers, but it's looking like sometime in mid-November if you did put Plan B. And so that's an important fact to remember. And instead of boring you all with other things, those are some of the game-changing events. Today, we passed just this week the 200,000 mark, 202,000 cases today. So more people have died from this pandemic than World War I, the Vietnam War, and Korean War. So tragic. And Mark and Will, we want to pray for you and your family, and we're so sorry you lost your father to pancreatic cancer. And for anyone listening, for anyone that's got someone suffering from illness or anyone that's lost a loved one. Wake County, 16,939 cases, 228 deaths. And in the state of North Carolina, as of today, 198,189 cases, 3,556 deaths. And we've tested for about 2.8 million people. So our positive rate right now is around 4.8%. But as Secretary Cohen said, it's still got to come down even further. So everybody, just make sure you do the 3 W's: wear your masks, wash your hands, social distance. And I don't know about you all, but what's saving me is I'm getting into the sports thing now. So I've got, like, you know, watching a little hockey, watching a little basketball, watching a little football. And it bothered me not seeing people in the stands, but the crowd noise is working, and, you know, cooking up some wings and watching the games. But these athletes are playing great, even without crowds. And, you know, I think it's an exciting time out there for us to at least stay together, united. So that's my update as we wrap up this show. But Mark, Anya, Will, we want to thank each of you for being with us today. And we'll be coming back in a few weeks to do a second round of our playbook as we close out the year and begin 2021 with what tools we can do and provide as a community to grow our small businesses and our entrepreneurs. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Steve.
Be safe and enjoy the fall evening out there.